This video today is about domestic violence. A lot of people have the myth that domestic violence is only for totally battered women, those women that we see that have bruises all over their face and different body parts, and there's some guy that's waiting outside the house with a bat and a wife beater shirt on. This is not always the case, and this is what we're going to dive into today, is the myth behind domestic violence, what domestic violence actually is, and compare that to what we are seeing. A big misconception is that domestic violence is only physical violence. We all see those battered women out there with bruises on their face and all over their bodies, and I'm here today to debunk the myth that domestic violence is only physical violence. It's also sexual violence and psychological violence, and we're going to get right into it. Domestic violence is between a batterer and a victim, okay? And this can be either male or female. So the newest research has shown that there are females that are the batterers and males that are the victims. Percentage-wise, I will post up here what the actual statistics are on that matter. The purpose or the motivation behind what the batterer does to engage the victim is power and control. Without delving too deep into the batterer's psychology, we're just going to go into the details of what the abuse looks like. There are 8 tactics that batterers or abusers use to victimize their victims. So let's start with number 1, that's intimidation. What is intimidation? Intimidation is basically somebody trying to make the victim feel afraid. So any tactics such as destroying property or slamming doors, breaking things to show that they have some kind of power, authority, or control over the situation, some upper hand, could also mean that they have a weapon and they display their guns, or that they know some kind of karate skills and can make somebody die in a split second with all the stuff that they know from their self-defense classes or black belt status, whatever that is, to make, again, the victim feel afraid of them so that they can coerce them to do whatever it is that they want them to do and, of course, abuse them. It can also be like looks, condescending, or your stupid looks or your evil looks, staring, glaring, some kind of a look that is obviously not unconditional positive regard. And actions like the property damaging or other tactics that they might use specific to the situation, or gestures, so using their hands violently or clenching their fists and jaws, becoming extremely red and showing their anger and how much power they have to control whatever is about to happen. And of course there are other gestures, but these are just a few. That leads us to coercion and threats, number 2, and that is always in order to hurt the victim. So the threat might be to use something against the victim to make them feel humiliated or ashamed or belittled in some way. It could also mean the threat of abandonment, especially, and we'll get to this, if it's economic abuse. It could mean the threat of using family members against the person or friends, or keeping them confined into a space. Again, a controlling tactic, threatening to leave or abandon the individual because the batterer grooms the victim to make them feel like they need the batterer. It's this whole cycle of you need me, you can't live without me, and you need my love, you need my emotional support, you need my financial support, you need me and you can't live without me. So the victim ends up feeling helpless and actually believing that they need this batterer in their life and they don't have the resources, even though there's never a lack of resources, only a lack of resourcefulness. And there are resources out there, and I will provide them below in the links, and I will also upload them to my website in a PDF format under the tab resources at www.itsyourtherapy.com, and I'll include that in the link below as well. But the batterer wants the victim to believe that they don't have control and that the batterer has control. So they also might threaten suicide. They also might threaten to report them to welfare if there's children involved, or somehow make them feel guilty or at fault for whatever abuse is going on, so that the victim will feel like it's them and not give any responsibility to the batterer. And the victim will continue to make exceptions and rationalize with the batterer's mentality, the crap basically that they're feeding the victim, that the victim ends up making sense of it. Oh, well, this is why he's hurting me. I am an idiot, or I did do something stupid, or I deserve to be punished. All these ridiculous accusations end up being their fault and putting them at risk. Number 3, it ties right in, is economic abuse. So is the abuser withholding money? Let's say there's a shared fund, or the abuser is not allowing the victim to go get a job and rationalizes why they don't need a job, and for whatever reason now the victim does not have a job, and if they do get a job, there is extreme guilt that they'll receive from this abuser, or there is some allowance from the batterer that, oh, well, if you do this, then you're not going to receive this and this and this, and there's always some kind of consequence for getting a job that coerces the victim to not have a job and therefore not have income and have a sense of autonomy and independence from the batterer or the abuser. And so the abuser might also either withhold the money, like I mentioned, or have a set amount of money that they allow the victim to have. So like a child, basically belittling that person, not allowing them to be who they are and creating a safe space for them. Instead, it's, you get this amount of allowance, or you deserve this amount, and I'm withholding this amount because you didn't do A, B, and C, or whatever the case. Allowance and finances and the economics of the victim are used against them. The 4th is using the children. If this is applicable in this situation, it could be a dog, it could be a family member, whatever the abuser is using, it's some kind of typically living being that the abuser uses to either make the victim feel guilty, or they might relay messages through this individual, or if it's an animal, through the attorney or through a family member. Whatever the case, there's collateral damage when it comes to having pets and children, and the abusers use these living beings in a case to make the victim feel more like a victim and attempt at getting some of their control back. The 5th in most books is considered male privilege, but as I mentioned earlier, this can also be a female that takes on this role. So this person defines what the female roles are in the relationship. There's no kind of compromise. It's just, this is what it is, and whatever I say is right, and whatever you say is wrong. And they may not come out and say that you're wrong and I'm right, but they will allude to the fact that whatever you say does not matter, whether it's verbally or covertly giving you the signals non-verbally that your opinion doesn't matter, like ignoring you when you're speaking, or making you feel stupid by giving you a look, as I mentioned earlier, just basically stating to you in a verbal or non-verbal sense that they know what's right, you don't. They're the king of the castle, the queen of the castle, and their space is the only space that matters. Your space doesn't. They have no boundaries. They interrupt your space. They disrespect you in all ways that you can imagine. And instead of giving you the right to be yourself however you are, they constantly invade your space and act like their time matters and their emotions matter and their life matters and their opinion matters. Whatever you have to say and think and what you're doing does not matter. It does not compute with however they're going to play things out in their life. So the result is often feeling disrespected, even though it's difficult for the victim to even recognize that, because they feel like they deserve this treatment because of how much brainwash they've received from their oppressors over time. And another issue with male privilege, or whatever kind of privilege at hand, there's always an upper hand and a lower hand. So the victim will feel somewhat of a servant, doing, most of the cleaning and the laundry and picking up and basically reducing themselves to cave women or men, and not thinking about evolving and making more of themselves and pursuing their dreams, goals, or being ambitious about anything, because it's constantly turned down by the victim or by the oppressor. They will always be the ones to make the big decisions. So anything financial, that has to do with survival, or has to do with children, or has to do with any big life decisions, moves, vacations, they'll be the ones that make those decisions, and often the little decisions as well, because they'll make them feel like big decisions, whether you can or cannot go shopping, or whether you cannot go out with your friends, or even get a job. Whatever it is, they try to control the situation. And again, this is on a spectrum. So there's the oppressors that will completely isolate a victim, and then there's the just abusers, and I don't want to say just, but there's the abusers that will use these tactics in covert ways, sometimes overt ways, openly or not openly, and they're still abusive tactics. They're ways to control a person versus letting that person be themselves and offering a safe space for that to occur. The sixth tactic that abusers or batterers use to obtain power and control over their victim is by minimizing, blaming, and denying. So this is denying any responsibility that they did anything wrong. So that is definitely a red flag if the abuser is not taking any responsibility whatsoever for their behavior, when it is significantly impacting somebody else and the behavior is definitely wrong, which I hope this video is inspiring you and educating you on what red flags to look out for. So minimizing their behavior. Oh, it's not that big of a deal, or, come on, you are making such a big deal about this. You're crazy. You're out of your mind. What have you been talking about? Like questioning you and your questions. So anytime that an abuser takes zero responsibility, that's a red flag. Anytime they are minimizing your reaction to their despicable behavior and minimizing their behavior in general, when it's obviously wrong, are red flags. When they are blaming you, like you're crazy, you're the one at fault. If you didn't do this, then you wouldn't have deserved a punishment, and that whole twist around and mind game that they play to rationalize their own behavior. So what I want to encourage you to do is listen to your gut feeling. If something feels off, if something feels wrong, if it's not feeling right, it is wrong. And they are at fault. And everybody plays a role in the scenario. There's no one person at fault. And of course, I'm sure the victim can take responsibility, but nobody can take responsibility for what they're not owning up to, and nobody can take responsibility for what they're not aware of. And if anything, you don't want to blame yourself. And there is no fault of a victim when for an abuser reacting or acting in a certain way. Yes, the victim can take responsibility for being an influence, but there's no excuse for the despicable behavior that goes on when the batterer is abusing their power and control and manipulating a situation so that they can obtain even more power and control. Not okay. This brings us to our 7th one, which is isolation. This is often overlooked. So mostly we think about batterers isolating the victim into a confined space, not letting them leave the house, not letting them talk to certain people, whether it be family or friends, not letting them get a job, go to school, be around people in general, because that might actually make the abuser accountable for their behavior. So they isolate this person. They may also affect what the person wears by giving their opinion, whether it's regarded or not. It may also be that they are very jealous, and jealousy, I think, is very overlooked. The oppressor or the batterer is very insecure. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the need to control. So their insecurities rub off on you by their need to control you, because if they can control you, they somehow feel better about themselves and they feel like their life is more in control. They have a sense of control because there's one thing in their life that they can control, and that's you. It's not if you don't allow it, but this is what is going on in their subconscious because they are not conscious of it most of the time. But jealousy is extremely overlooked. They're jealous because of their own insecurities. So if they become obsessive about you, they're putting you on a pedestal and then putting you down, and there's this whole roller coaster of putting on a pedestal and putting you down, there is definitely a red flag that this person is emotionally unstable and most likely insecure about their own self. And we all have our insecurities, but that does not excuse the behavior of trying to control and manipulate you and your life and getting in the way of your well-being and your ultimate happiness. So the next thing is number 8, and this is emotional abuse. So I am willing to bet that most people have experienced emotional abuse of some kind in their lifetime, if not from a caregiver or an ex-boyfriend or a current boyfriend. This is definitely a control tactic, whether it's conscious or unconscious, subconscious. And the batterer will use this to put you down. They will make you feel bad about yourself. They will lift you up and then put you down, that roller coaster that I talked about a little bit ago. And they might do this by labeling you, calling you names, making different side comments about what you're wearing or how your hair is or what they prefer you look like or don't look like, the kind of friends that you hang out with, what you do, how you act, what you read, what you do in your free time. If it's not serving them in some way, most likely they're going to have an opinion about it and it's going to be negative. Playing mind games is kind of a generalistic term, but they put into ploy these different suggestions, and the power of suggestion is real. Sales, if you're in sales, you know that the power of suggestion is very strong, and they will use this against you. So keep in mind that everything that the batterer or oppressor or abuser does is for themselves to somehow gain a sense of control because they feel out of control, to gain a sense of security because they do not feel secure about who they are, where they're from, what they're about, whatever's going on in their lives, emotionally, psychologically, physically, financially, mentally, whatever it is. They are trying to gain their security and control by using you and thus abusing you. They use humiliation, especially around friends or family members. They are not shy. A lot of times when it comes to humiliating you in public or around certain people that you care about, Or they do it more covertly, which is behind your back, and they also might say something to you about what your family feels about you to make you feel that your family is on their side and not on your side. And they also might just talk about you behind your back and gossip and make you look bad, so that they gain some sense of control about how the people in your life view you, especially loved ones, people that could rescue you if you shall need that. I hope you found this intriguing and informative. The Power and Control resource, I will link the link below for you to check out for yourself and keep handy. And I want to continue to encourage you to educate yourself on physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, and continue visiting my channel. Make sure to click the like button and ring the bell to be notified of any future videos I may have. Also, please comment below on any questions or concerns you might have, and other elements that you would like to see on this channel, so I can continue to make informative, relevant videos for you.